Have you ever played over a chord progression and found that sometimes there was inconsistency with what scale or mode that you were using? For example, certain parts of the track, the scale sounded great, and then other parts, it didn't sound so good. This can be an easy fix, and all it takes is just a little understanding of the chords that are being used in the progression. Now, why should you learn this? Couldn't you simply just go on YouTube, type in a mode that you want to mess around with, and then just pick a backing track? Well, you could, but you will get bored of playing that one mode position over and over again, and you won't even understand why you can play that mode, which is the most important thing that you need to know. In this video, I will explain how to know and understand what modes or scales you can use in any type of chord progression. What I'll be teaching in this video will be universal to any chord progression or backing track, so you can implement what you learned to anything. Before I get started, my name is Matt Kelly. Welcome to my channel. I post all sorts of guitar-related content such as lessons, reviews, and experimental videos. If you want to hang around and join this fun community, then hit that subscribe button below. After watching this video, make sure to get your free backing track, PDF guide, and backing track decoder so you can further practice with what you learned today. So the first thing you should always look for before soloing in a progression are all of the chords that are being used. The chords will tell us three things that we need to know. It will tell us what key it's in, whether it's major or minor, and what mode would be the best choice. Let's break down all three of these to get a full understanding of how to figure this out yourself. Figuring out the key most of the time is relatively easy because the first chord is almost always the key that the chord progression is in. Sometimes this isn't the case though, and when that happens, we can do two things. Listen to what the chord progression is pulling towards, or break down each of the chords to find the key that they would all fit in with. For example, if we had a D minor, E minor, F major, and C major chords within a progression, we would have to break down each of those chords' scale degrees to figure out which one of them would contain all of those chords. C major would be the correct key because D minor is the second degree of the C major scale, E minor is the third, and F major would be the fourth. The key couldn't be any of the others, for example, F major, because although C major and D minor is within the F major scale, E minor is not. It's a half diminished chord. How I broke all of this down is just knowing what notes are within a particular scale, as well as knowing the major and minor chord formulas that are within that scale. So once I have or know all the notes within the C major scale, I then have to determine which of those notes are major or minor. This is where we start to get into diatonic chords. Diatonic chords are chords that are derived from the notes of a key. Each key contains 7 different notes, and you can build chords off of those 7 notes. When we talk about diatonic chords, we name them with Roman numerals corresponding to the scale degree on which each chord is built. The uppercase Roman numerals represent major chords, and the lowercase represent minor chords. So as you can see the major-minor formula over each of the scale degrees, this is what helps us know what chords are within a specific key. Don't worry about the 7th degree or the half diminished chord at the moment. It's really not important for this lesson, but I will make another video talking about it sometime in the future. Within that PDF, there's also a scale degree guide that will walk you through that entire process, and will also have some practice examples. Now that we know how to find the key, the next part is actually the easiest of the 3 steps. Whatever the key is in, just see or listen if it's a major or minor chord. Minor chords obviously sound darker and sad, and major chords sound happy. Once you determine whether it's major or minor, this will lead us into figuring out what mode to use and will narrow down our options. So there are 7 modes. We have Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. The major modes are Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian, and the minor modes are Aeolian, Dorian, and Phrygian. The 7th mode, Locrian, is what we were talking about earlier. It's not important for this lesson, so I'm going to skip that for now. So now that we've broken down which of those modes are major or minor, this will help us narrow down even further of what mode would be the best choice. So let's say that the key we are playing in is B minor. Our mode options are now B Aeolian, B Dorian, or B Phrygian. Now, how do we know which of those modes to choose from? In some cases, you might be able to use all 3, and you can pick whatever mode that you like best. Whenever we have this option, it's normally over a stagnant root chord or a riff-based progression. The reason this works is because there are no chords or notes that will clash with any of the notes within all 3 of those minor modes, since we're just really playing a B chord, which is in each of the 3 modes. Now, in a normal progression that has more than 1 to 2 chords, this is where we have to compare the notes within a chord to to the notes within a mode to make sure we have no clashes of intervals. That is what makes a mode or scale sound bad over a progression, a clash of intervals between a chord and a scale. Let's break this down with an example. So let's say we have two chords in a B minor progression. We have a B minor 7th and a D dominant 7th. The first chord in the progression is B minor 7th, but the chord that dictates which mode that you would use would be the second, E dominant 7th. We know that any B minor chord would work over any of those three modes, which is why we have to look at the second one. E dominant 7th consists of the notes E, B, D, and G sharp. Now to figure out what makes up a chord, just know that any chord is made up of a root, a third, a fifth, and in this case, a seventh, since we're messing around with seventh chords. If it's a minor chord, that third would be a flat or a minor third. There's going to be more information about how to break down a chord in that PDF guide. It's actually relatively pretty easy, but I don't want to waste too much time going over all these tiny details. Now we need to compare the notes within that E dominant 7th chord to all of the notes within each of the three modes to see which one would fit best. We can see that the B Aeolian mode wouldn't work because of the clashes of intervals between the G sharp in the E dominant 7th chord and the G in the B natural minor scale or Aeolian mode. This also eliminates Phrygian because it contains that G note, which leaves us with the Dorian mode. All four of those notes are within this mode, therefore Dorian would be the best choice. Now for a little tip or hack, so you don't have to go through this process every time, whenever you see a root minor chord, and in this case would be the B minor 7th, followed by a 4th degree dominant 7th chord, which would be the E dominant 7, just know that Dorian will always be the best choice. Now for another example, if I were to play an E minor 7th chord instead of the E dominant 7th chord, B Aeolian would be the better choice because of that G. That G note is within the E minor 7th chord. So if I had B minor 7th going to E minor 7th, Aeolian would be the better choice over Dorian. Now the next important thing is knowing the mode scales and positions. I'm going to try and break this down and show you how to learn them in a completely different way. A good way to learn the mode shapes is not by learning each of the individual shapes themselves. I would learn all 7 of the major scale positions, and upon doing so, you will also be learning all 7 of the different mode shapes. For example, the second position of the major scale would be the Dorian shape, the third position would be the Phrygian shape, so on and so forth. Remember earlier when we were talking about how each scale degree or note within a key has their own chords? This is the same thing but with modes. Each of those notes within a scale have their own modes. Here's a diagram showing this. The order of the modes never changes. This is the order they will be in when being compared from the major scale. If you memorize the order of the modes and know all 7 of the major scale positions, this will make your life much easier and you will be able to play all over the fretboard and you won't be stuck in a single position. I'm not going to get too deep into this as we just learned a lot and I don't want to cram you with too much information. This was all just a brief understanding of how to start implementing and figuring out how to do all this yourself. The PDF document will guide you further and will give you more examples to understand and practice with. The best way to learn this stuff is by taking action and applying what you learned within the context of actual music, and you will do just that within that guide. I hope this video helped you through the door of starting your journey of understanding how this all works and how it's all connected. Once you understand this stuff, playing guitar will come much easier to you and eventually you will be able to play almost anything you want. If you're interested and really want to dive deep into understanding all of this through 12 unique backing tracks that cover over 5 different modes, then check out my new guitar course, Keep on Jammin'. I'll link that down in the description below. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments any questions you have about anything I went over in this video, so I can talk about it in part 2 of this mode series. I'll see you guys next week, and don't forget to keep on jamming.